Today I'm making good old chicken and dumplings. Okay, and I'm using a rotisserie chicken from the deli and the grocery store, just the plain rotisserie chicken, to make my broth. I've got water. I'm boiling it for about 30 minutes to get the good flavor out. You can use regular chicken breast, raw chicken breast, just boil them in your water. Save your broth because that's going to be the base for our dumplings. And my chicken's been boiling now for about 30, maybe 45 minutes. It's coming apart. I'm going to have to take it out so it can cool, so I can debone it before we go on with the rest of the recipe. Being cooked already, it falls apart real easy. There won't be a lot of deboning to do. As you can see, it's just falling off the bone. Then we're just going to shred it into bite-sized pieces. Got a good broth now. There's only one way to debone a chicken, and that's with your hands. But like we said before, this one is falling apart. You just want the chicken, you want to leave the skin. It doesn't do good in dumplings. And you want to do this before you start to the rest of your dumplings, so it'll be ready. Cut. Now that I've deboned my chicken, that's the bowl. I may not use all of it, but I'll use what I need. Turning the heat on my broth. That's what we cook the chicken in. Nothing's been added. I'm going to add salt, and this is a no measure recipe. You just do it to your own taste. Black pepper. And I'm making what would probably be a double batch because I'm having guests for dinner. So you would want to probably cut this in half if it's just for a small family. 1 quart of chicken broth, because it's richer than the broth that we just made. One can of cream of chicken soup. This just adds a little bit of thickness and makes your broth a little more rich. And about 2 or 3 cups of milk, depending on how much you're making. You just want it to be just a creamy white. And for this big batch, 1 stick of butter. Don't use margarine, use butter. And then over here, where we'll make our dumpling dough, have plain flour, all-purpose baking mix. It can be any kind of baking mix that you find on the shelf. Just make sure it says baking mix. You'll need your roller and your pizza cutter. And of course a bowl to mix with. So I will make at least 2 batches. Just baking mix and milk. And you want it where it's just almost impossible to stir. Just a good doughy dough. On a good floured surface so it's not going to stick. You can do this on your bare cabinet. It makes a big mess, but if you don't have dough boards, you'll have to get violent to get this out. But that's how thick you want it. You don't want it sort of run through. See, I'm having a hard time getting it out. That's because it's thick like we want it. And if there's a few little dry spots in it, that's okay. They'll cook. And you don't want to knead it, you just want to get it covered good with your flour. Kind of pat it out in the form that you want. If you're on a cabinet, it doesn't make any difference because you got lots of room. And start rolling. That's the only problem using these. They slip, so you have to anchor them to the table. You want your dough about less than 1/4 of an inch thick. So we're going to go almost the entire size of this sheet with this dough. Making dumplings is messy. I'll have flour on the floor, I'll have flour on the stove, I'll have flour on the cabinet, but the dumplings will be good. Okay, can you see the thickness of that? That's about how thick you want it. Okay, to make the cutting easier, just take your pizza cutter, that's our first batch of dough. It's ready to drop in when our broth goes to boiling, so we'll be waiting a few minutes. Okay, I'm just stirring this till it comes to a good rolling boil, so the milk has a tendency to stick to the bottom. So you need to keep it stirred up off the bottom. Just add milk as needed. If you get it too thin, just add a little more baking mix. Mixing just a little bit more flour in here because it's just a little bit thin. That's why I'm going back and forth. Okay, my broth is boiling, both of them. I had to make it 2 pots because there was so much in the first one that it wouldn't boil. You just drop them in one at a time. And you never want to stir them. You take the back of your wooden spoon and push them down. If you need to stir the bottom, you just do it very carefully. When I get them all in here, I'll turn the heat off and let them set for about 30 minutes. I'll add my chicken and then turn my heat off. I kind of let them gum up because I had to move them. Turn that down just a little bit. That's another thing, you have to adjust your heat as you go along. I've got all of my dough in now, and it's at a boil. Get them pushed down good for the last time. And add my chicken. You just want to push it down also. Get it. You don't want to stir it to mix them, you just push them down. You stir them, you're going to have dumpling soup. After they sit, then you can stir them and mix the chicken in better. Go put the lids on, turn the heat off, and they continue cooking. That's chicken and dumplings till we're ready to eat.